the next speaker will be the distinguished representative of Afghanistan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for convening this meeting to adopt the resolution on the situation in Afghanistan. Allow me to express my gratitude to the German mission as a long-time facilitator of this very important resolution for Afghanistan, particularly Ambassador Christoph and his team, specifically Councillor Federique, for their leadership and able facilitation. Germany is one of the long-standing supporters of the Afghan people and a genuine partner and ally in the efforts for ensuring peace, security, and prosperity in Afghanistan. I also would like to extend my appreciation to the representatives of all member states who participated in the discussion, showed flexibility, and supported this resolution through active contribution, especially those states that co-sponsored the resolution today. Mr. President, as we adopt this annual resolution on the situation in Afghanistan, let me speak about some major political, security, and socio-economic developments since the adoption of the resolution last year. These includes holding of the presidential and parliamentary elections, the pursuit of peace and reconciliation efforts, in the implementation of the reform agenda to achieve self-reliance. On the election, against the backdrop of serious security threats, the parliamentary elections were held on the 20th of October 2018, where 4.6 million Afghans voted. The new parliament was inaugurated on the 26th of April 2019, where about 60% of the new members or the younger generation below the age of 40, and about 25 to 28% are women. This was yet another important step for strengthening and sustaining democracy in Afghanistan. Through their votes, the people of Afghanistan once again proved that no threat can ever affect their strong will for consensus, and that the essence of democracy is the pillarstone of the new Afghanistan. Following the parliamentary elections on September 28th, we held our fourth presidential elections. People, despite the threat of violence and attacks, in some cases even having their fingers cut off by the Taliban, they still came out to vote. For Afghans, this wasn't simply a vote to elect the future president, but rather a vote for democracy, and a vote for the republic. People voted to defend the Constitution and the sovereignty of the state, and they voted for the prosperity and stability of Afghanistan. For 2 million Afghans, their vote was their power to say no to terrorism and yes for peace. The Afghan National Defense and Security Forces participated in both elections with their utmost professionalism and bravery by protecting the constitutional rights of every Afghan to vote. About 70,000 of our courageous soldiers safeguarded our people during this historical moment, and due to their effective measures and competence, most attacks were averted. For a majority in here, elections and voting is a granted right, and those who participate simply perform their civic duty. For Afghans, it's beyond the civic duty. It's our civic power that we can exercise equally to define the destiny of the new Afghanistan. Here, I would like to pause and congratulate our friends and allies, particularly NATO member countries who have stood by us during the past 18 years as we took our journey for rebuilding this new Afghanistan. You all invested with your blood and treasure in our pursuit of democracy and stability in Afghanistan. And now there should be no doubt in our commitment to those values and principles. Peace is an important priority for the people and government of Afghanistan. It was in February of 2018 when President Ghani made the first call, an unconditional offer for peace talks with the Taliban. Following the unconditional offer for peace talks, in June of that year, we had the 3 days ceasefire, which helped us to know the ability of our society in observing the 20,000 Taliban who came to our big cities during the 3-day celebration of Eid holidays. This helped us to know that reaching peace and an end to conflict is possible. Mr. President, as we know, the success of every peace deal is in its sustainability and duration. And it can only happen if the public is involved, engaged, and consulted. For the government, in order to identify the framework for negotiations, nationwide consultation was necessary. To do so, an important step was taken by the government, arranging the consultative peace jirga. In April 2019, 3,200 representatives from every part of the country participated in the jirga to highlight their mandate for peace. The 5 days consultative peace jirga, of which 30% of the delegates were women, adopted a national roadmap and a mandate for peace. This roadmap was decisive in its parameters, calling for, amongst others, an immediate ceasefire, the call for a sustainable peace in direct talks with the government, and the preservation of human rights, particularly women's rights. Women's constitutional right is an important feature of the new Afghanistan. As the Secretary General says, the preservation and protection of women's rights is not the only good thing to do, but the right thing to do for an effective, meaningful, and lasting peace. The government of Afghanistan welcomes all regional and international peace efforts, which aligns with an Afghan-led and Afghan-owned peace process, and it helps to facilitate the direct talk with the Taliban. In line with international norms, we firmly believe in the principles of respecting sovereignty in state-to-state relations and holding these values central to the success of our peace efforts. We would like to thank our friends and allies that have supported our work to reach a dignified and sustainable peace, including the US, the European Union, Germany, Norway, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the State of Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, Indonesia, and Uzbekistan, among others. Mr. President, on the security situation, the Taliban and other transitional terrorist groups have continued to be relentless and violent to create terror and fear. Our national security and defense forces have proved their ability to successfully defend our country in the most courageous way, reverting many attacks and protecting our people. The Afghan soldier that fights today, in fact, eliminates the threat which is posed to all of us globally. As we have said before, terrorism do not recognize as boundaries and borders, and they threaten the lives of everyone and everywhere. As a result of the growing strength of our security forces, the Taliban and terrorist groups have resorted to cowardly and deadly attack on civilian targets, causing record-high numbers of civilian casualties this year, with women and children making a third of them. Targeting civilians and public institutions, including hospitals, clinics, and using individuals as human shields are violations of international law, and they go against all moral values. These acts need to be stopped immediately by the Taliban. Among the persistent challenges that continue to threaten the peace and security of Afghanistan are terrorism and the presence of regional and transnational terrorist groups, including Taliban, ISIL and Al-Qaeda affiliates as well. Recently, the government of Afghanistan carried out an intense and successful operation in Nangarhar to eliminate ISIL strongholds. The past 18 years of conflict imposed by terrorist groups and the Taliban has not only resulted in the loss of innocent lives and instability in my country, it has also deeply impacted our joint efforts for achieving social and economic development. The Afghan government still has undertaken to implement and realize the reform agenda according to the commitments made in the Geneva Mutual Accountability Framework and the Afghanistan National Peace and Development Frameworks. As we work towards fully implementing this agenda, we are making tremendous progress in our regional economic cooperation agenda. The Afghan government welcomes all the initiatives that helps our regional economic connectivity, and it helps Afghanistan to be connected to the region and outside. Mr. President, terrorism is not the only threat that people of Afghanistan face. The effects of climate change leading to severe humanitarian crises are another critical challenge we're faced with. Afghanistan is a predominantly agricultural economy. The prolonged drought had destructive effect in the life and well-being of our society, and driving many of the families to leave their homes and provinces in search of better alternatives. This leads to a very critical humanitarian situation that requires an immediate response. However, I do need to highlight the leadership role that the United Nations has taken in coordinating with the international community to facilitate the necessary response as soon as possible. The threats of illicit drug cultivation, production, and trafficking poses another security challenge for Afghanistan. The Afghan people have been the first victim of this menace and continue to pay the highest price. There is also a direct link of the narcotics into the source of funding for the Taliban. In this regard, the government of Afghanistan has been a committed partner and an ally in fighting to eradicate and dismantle this threat. However, it's not a single country issue. We need a regionally comprehensive and a collaborated effort and strategy to counter the narcotics trade and market. We need an inclusive approach involving all regional and international stakeholders to combat the root causes of the problem, including the trafficking of precursors, financial safe havens, and demand reduction. Mr. President, in conclusion, I would like to take this opportunity to thank you and your government for your sustained support in assisting the Afghan people and the government in our efforts to restore peace and stability in Afghanistan. We should look into the future of Afghanistan from our perspective, more forward-looking and optimistic. For some, the 18 years may look a long time for rebuilding the country from ruins and complete destructions. But for me, where I still remember the dark days of the Taliban, an absence of hope, where the regime locked all of us in complete isolation and contact from the outside world, today is the brightest and the most fortunate future that I had ever dreamed of. Due to your tremendous support, we have come a long way, and we have made great progress. Today, your support in this resolution is another important step in sending a strong message of solidarity to Afghans and also to those that still aim to turn Afghanistan to safe havens for terrorist groups. Your voices in here will matter to people in Afghanistan, and that they are not alone, and that in our fight against terrorism and in our quest for peace, we're all together. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished permanent representative of Afghanistan for her statement